Good morning, guys. We are going to be doing some notes today, and we're going to be using several colors. So I would have your colors close by if you're going to fill these out from the printed version, or you can fill them out and just write them in your notes. Today you're going to be uploading a picture, so you're going to want to make sure that you either print this out or make a quick sketch in your journal. You can list out each part we're going to go over and fill that in, and then to complete your assignment you're just going to attach a photo. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the digestive system, and we're going to start at the very top of our digestive system with our mouth, and we're going to use red to color our mouth in. Good morning. And so we're going to start by talking about the mouth. Now in the mouth we find our teeth, and teeth are bones, right? Our only visible bones. They break down food into smaller pieces. We also have saliva, which is our spit, right? And believe it or not, it's not just there to help make your food moist. It also is there because it contains enzymes that start to break down food chemically. So this is chemical digestion. We're going to talk about two types of digestion. We're going to talk about chemical digestion, right, which is a chemical change, changing what something is made of. And then we're going to talk about physical digestion, breaking it down physically. So our teeth help break it down physically. Our saliva starts that chemical digestion, breaking the chemical bonds so that our body can absorb it. The tongue is our muscle that pushes food into our esophagus. Okay, so if you want to shade your box red around the outside, it's going to look like a rainbow today because we're going over several different parts. Get my marker so it goes a little faster. All right, so the mouth is where both physical and chemical digestion starts. Okay, so that's part one. Then we're going to move down. Where does it go next? It goes into this tube, and we are going to use blue for this tube. And this tube is called our esophagus. And the esophagus connects our mouth to our stomach. This is a stretchy tube that food travels down from the back of the throat to the stomach. And it uses a muscle action called peristalsis. And peristalsis is like a wave of muscle contractions to squeeze that food and push it down into our stomach. Okay? And so if you want to go around your box, you can box that one in blue. I'm going to switch to my marker so it goes a little faster. So the esophagus on top connects to our mouth and on bottom connects to our stomach. If you've ever heard of acid reflux, that's because at the base of the esophagus down here where it connects to the stomach, there is a muscle, and that muscle sometimes in some people doesn't make quite a tight enough connection right here, and so stomach acid can seep into the esophagus. And while the stomach has a special lining to protect it from that acid, the esophagus does not, and so it gives us that burning sensation. Okay, now once it goes from the mouth to the esophagus and then to the stomach, right? The stomach's job, a little blurry. There we go. The stomach's job is to store food that arrives from the esophagus. It breaks down the food with acid, right? That acid that can kind of give us indigestion and burn a little bit, but it helps to break down those foods. And it also helps by physically churning, right? And so it's this kind of sac structure here at the base of our esophagus And so not only is it full of acid, but it's also squeezing the food to break it up. And when food comes out of the stomach, it empties into the small intestine. So let's color our stomach purple. We're going to use purple for this one. Okay. It's got this little hook on the end, right? And in our stomach, it's lined with a special type of material called mucosa. And those cells secrete a thick mucus that lines our stomach so that our stomach doesn't get injured from that intense acid that's helping us break down our food. When your stomach is empty sometimes, you can hear it churning, that physical squeezing, and that's what makes our stomach growl, right? It's because it's still squeezing, trying to mash that food up into smaller and smaller pieces so that our small intestine can absorb it. All right, so we've got our mouth, our esophagus, our stomach. Okay, from the stomach, we're going to talk about a couple of things before we talk about the small intestine. It's going to go to the small intestine next. But in the small intestine, and a little before the small intestine, in this particular area called the duodenum, several enzymes are secreted, and we're going to talk about where those come from. So the first one we're going to talk about is the pancreas. And the pancreas we're going to color yellow, and it's right underneath the stomach, and it's actually a gland, and it secretes enzymes into the small intestine to further break down our food. If you're familiar with anyone who has diabetes, the pancreas is the problem when we have diabetic, because also in the pancreas, insulin is made here. And insulin helps regulate blood sugar. Now remember, all of our body cells need sugar, need glucose. But also remember, our body needs to be in balance. And when our body has too much sugar in our bloodstream, it's not good for us. And it's also not good for us to have too little glucose in our bloodstream, because we need a steady supply. If we get it all at once, then our cells are overloaded. They don't have enough time to process it. And if we don't get it enough, then our cells can't go through cellular respiration. So the pancreas is a very important part of digestion. Okay? And I used yellow for the pancreas if you're color coding with me. Also, another very important part of digestion is the liver. And the liver's job is a giant filter. I'm using brown. It filters blood coming from our digestive tract. The liver actually produces bile, and bile is what helps us break down fatty foods. So bile is very important for being able to break down fat that we eat, and some of them are good fats and some of them are fats that are not good for us. And so those fats are very important for our digestive process. So we're going to color our liver brown, because it is kind of brown when you look at it in real life. The liver serves a lot of jobs. It removes toxins from our body and filters medications out of our body sometimes. It is very important. It's a giant filter for us. Now, when that bile is made in the liver, it actually gets stored for a little while, because we're not constantly eating fatty food, right? We're not like shoving hamburgers and greasy french fries down our throat all the time. And so our storage spot for our bile is called the gallbladder, and it's attached to the liver right here. And bile is green, and so we're going to color that little gallbladder there green. The job of the gallbladder is to store bile produced by the liver until it's needed to break down foods where? In the small intestine. Okay, and that one was green. Dark green, because we're actually going to have another green. If you know someone, maybe your mom or dad or aunt or grandma, who's had their gallbladder removed, a lot of times people who've had their gallbladder removed can't eat as many fatty foods because they don't have a storage of bile. They can only process as much fatty food as their liver can make bile for. So they can still eat fatty foods, but sometimes it changes how much or how often, or maybe it gives them a stomach ache when they eat certain foods, because each part of this system has to work together in order for all of the parts to function properly. All right, so we've got food that comes into our mouth, goes down through our esophagus, through peristalsis, that muscle contraction squeezing our food into our stomach, goes into our stomach, acid gets added to it, stomach physically squeezes it and mashes it up into a paste called chyme, not thyme, chyme. And then it's going to go into our small intestine. And we have a small and a large intestine. We're going to use pink for our small intestine. And the small intestine is the money spot. It is where everything pays off. This process can be kind of long, and so it can take, hours for food to work itself through our stomach and our small intestine and into our large intestine. But the small intestine's job is to absorb nutrients, right? It's breaking down food into even smaller parts using those enzymes made in the liver, enzymes made in the pancreas, from the pancreas, and bile that's coming from the liver. Almost all of the nutrients that we absorb from the food we eat is absorbed in the small intestine. And the small intestine actually has some really cool features. There's these villi, which look like these kind of fingers that stick out from the walls. And inside those villi are blood vessels, right? So we've got little red blood vessels. Let's draw them in there. And those are those capillaries, right? Those really, really small, thin blood vessels that allow for exchange. And so this is how our food, right, our nutrients from our food, they're in our small intestine and they get absorbed into our bloodstream through these villi, these little finger-like projections, because it increases the surface area, right? If we were to pull this out, and make it flat, it would cover a lot of surface area. So these villi help us to absorb the maximum amount of nutrients from our small intestine. Okay? And remember, this is our pink. Okay. Now from our small intestine, our food is going to go to our large intestine. Our large intestine gets all of the waste. I'm using light green if you're color coding with me. From the small intestine, it absorbs any remaining water. That's the main function of the large intestine, is to absorb water, because we've added enzymes, we've added bile, we've added a lot of things that are going to make the food we ate. We've drank water, right? And so all of those things have been processed up until now right alongside our food. And so now our large intestine is going to pull that water out, and it's going to transfer that waste so that it can be eliminated from our body. Wow, Miss Young can't spell. Eliminated. There we go. All right, so this one we're going to color light green. So we've got all of this large intestine. It leaves our small intestine. It goes up, over, and around. And all while it's traveling through our large intestine, that water is being pulled out of our waste. Okay? And so this one is light green all around the edges. We're really grateful for our large intestine, because if we didn't have it, we'd always have diarrhea because there would be too much water in our waste. All right, our rectum is the last part we're going to talk about because it is the last spot where your poop goes before it is evacuated from your body, and we're going to use orange. So this is the very last section of our large intestine, and this part has the important job of holding waste until it's ready to be expelled. So this is the last section of the large intestine before reaching the anus, and the anus is the muscle that allows us to control when we open and close our rectum, right? This is where waste is expelled. Okay, so the rectum is very important because it's what, you know, kind of gives us the sensation that we need to go to evacuate our colon. Colon is another word that we use to talk about our large intestine. So the rectum holds waste until it is evacuated from the body. So you should have a rainbow of colors for your digestive system. We start here with our physical and chemical digestion. This esophagus physically pushes it down. It gets to our stomach where we physically and chemically break it down farther with stomach acid and the squeezing of the stomach. It goes from there into our small intestine where we use bile and enzymes from our pancreas to help us break down sugars and fats, and all of the nutrients that we eat is going to get absorbed in our small intestine, right? All of the glucose is going to get absorbed through our small intestine. And then it's going to go into our large intestine where it's going to go up, over, and back down so that the water can be pulled out that's been added to it through the process of digesting the food. It's going to go to our rectum where we're going to get the signal to our brain that we need to go evacuate our colon, and then our anus is going to open and allow the waste to leave. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys understand the parts of the digestive system. I will talk to you guys again soon.